Welcome to iDig3D's first in a series of Onshape tutorials. First steps into Onshape, and we're going to create a simple vase. So fire up Onshape. If you don't have an account, you'll need to sign up for an account. You should see a list of documents. Big blue button over here. We're going to click on Create and create a new document. Let's name this something. We'll say Vase Tutorial. I'm using a public account, so create a public document. This right here shows the name of the document that we created, so it's Vase Tutorial. Over here we see Sketch is the first one that we need to start with. Features list over here, our parts list down here, nothing's created yet. Our features, basically we have the origin, we can turn on and off, that's the center point. And we have our top plane, our front plane, and our right plane. Over here we have our navigator. Click on front. You go to the edges, it'll show the back side of whatever plane you're working with. Corner plane here. Little arrows, we can move things around, up, down. And then if you get totally cattywampus, you can click on here and go back to trimetric. So click and drag, we can move this to wherever we like to see it go. Right clicking on your mouse, we can then rotate things around. Again, if we get stuck, you can go back to here, go back to our trimetric view. Here's our showing planes. We have front, top, and right. So if you select one, you can then select the other ones as well. If you select one again, it deselects it. If you select anywhere in the white area, it unselects all of them. So it cancels the selection. So you don't really need to hold any external keys to add to your selection process. Everything starts with a sketch, and we need a plane to do our first sketch on, and we need like the front plane. So if you click on the front plane, you can select it, and then our first feature will do a sketch. So this shows that the sketch is going to be in line with the front plane here. We can work at this angle. We'll grab a line here a minute. We create a line, and then everything is within that plane of the front. If we right click, we can rotate and see where that is. But one of the fancy keyboard keys we can use is we'll use N, and it'll show the normal view, which is basically a straight-on view of the plane that you're working. If you hit the F key, so N and F keys are really good to remember. F, it will fit whatever your view is into whatever objects are within your view into the full view. The other nice key to know is P is for planes. We can toggle the planes on and off. Because when you do a fit, it actually fits the planes as well if they're being shown. We turn them off and hit F again for fit, and then it fits it without the planes. Like everything else, you have the undo. We can undo, click here. It also undoes showing of things that you're working on. Doesn't undo an angle, a view angle change. Redo, undo. Again, fit, N for normal view, fit again, turn the planes off, fit, and then I'll go out to whatever your sketch is working on. Let's turn our planes on again, P for plane. This is our orientation at this point. Our drawing tools, here's your lines, here's a corner rectangle. You click on the down arrow here, we can then do a center point rectangle. Shows you the shortcut there after the name in the blue. It says R. So it shows you what key you can use. You can get G for a corner rectangle. Gee whiz, that's the corner. Let's use a corner rectangle. We'll draw from this point right here. If you get close, it shows that it's creating a constraint to that, trying a line to it. If we go on the vertical line here, we can see a vertical indicator. Horizontal shows a horizontal indicator that would constrain along the horizontal line here. And this right here will be a constraint at the exact point. So we'll go from the center point, click here, once, drag out, and it's creating our rectangle. Automatically selects the horizontal distance there. We could type that in if we want. We can leave it blank. Let's use that to our advantage. Many printers, the earlier Prusa i3s are roughly a build volume of 200 by 200 by 180. So if we have a bed that's 200 millimeters, we could type in 200. We want to use this as our center point. And so 200, we divide that by 2. That'd give us 100, but we want to have a little bit of a buffer, so let's say 180 divided by 2. We can put math in these numbers and it'll automatically do the math calculations for us. So we got 90. Vertically, it automatically, once that's been entered, it selects the corresponding vertical distance that we can type in, the dimension. And 180 is a little high. We'll say 150 to keep our constraints there. It's off the screen. Again, if we hit F, it'll fit that with including the plane. Hit P to turn off the plane. F again. Select the tool to deselect it, and then we can move the 90 out of the way. It's off the screen. Again, F key to fit. And there's our dimensions for what we're going to print. So select OK. This first tool will extrude whatever face or sketch that you design, showing a light gray area, so then we can extrude that. So we'll select that, and it automatically does a depth of 25 millimeters. Since we're viewing normal to that plane, we need to right click and rotate. Now I just created an object. We can select this here, hit the delete key. One way to get rid of that, we can also undo. Undo will bring it back. Has unlimited levels of undo. Undo again. Similar results. The tool we're really interested in today is the revolve tool. We'll select that tool. We need that face again. And now we need an axis. Right now it's selecting faces. So we select our face, and then we need to select an axis. So we need to select this indicator here, so then we can describe which axis we want it to rotate around. This will be our center axis. So you can see it creates this giant cylinder. This is our very simplest vase, just a simple cylinder. If we select a different line, it'll change the rotation out here, and below, and then the center as well. Coming up from the origin point, and if we commit that, we now have a solid object. This roughly shows you the round volume that your printer should be able to cover. When you commit that, it automatically hides that sketch. So if we want to edit that sketch, we can double click on this here. Notice that the revolve still stays there. We're going back higher in the feature set, so we can make these changes. Again, if we hit normal, fit, we can delete this line here, select it, hit the delete key. It's now gone. We also lose that dimension. This blue point shows that we could then move this point as well. It's a free dimension. It hasn't been constrained by any means. We'd either have to give it a dimension or a distance to constrain it, and that's this right here, the dimension tool. Select the line, we could type in a dimension, 80. I'd have to define this one down here as well because it has no reference for that point. Select the dimension tool again. We can then use this to adjust this. If we move near this point, we could have it line up with that. It'll give us a reference point. And then if we change this dimension here, double click 50, it shortens that. But to avoid that altogether, we can undo this. Get back to our line here. I want to use that just as a construction line. So we'd use this tool here and convert it to a construction line. So this dimension would stay intact, and this shows us our constraints are for working within our 3D printer's space. Do a straight line here. We could do a point to point. It's a construction line. So we need to deselect the line tool. Select this line. Turn the construction on and off. You can toggle it by clicking that or use the Q key. If you need to know the shortcuts, you could go over to the question mark here and see the keyboard shortcuts. Pretty handy to see. Study this at your own leisure. Q gives us this here, and then we see our shape. Commit that. And our revolve now has an issue. So it doesn't know what's going on here. We can roll over the red, do not regenerate, select a face or a sketch in the region. So we'll unselect that and then select this face here. And then it fixes that. So now we see we have a nice cone. Again, we can go in and change our sketch. Delete this line here. Do another line, 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 line. Hit the escape key. We're in the line tool. We could hit the L key to toggle the line. Click OK, and then we can see our crazy shape. Go back to our sketch. This cool little button here, Final, will show you a live view, and we can then change these to make our fancy shape. There's our vase, roughly, or our rocket ship. Delete a line. You don't have a closed surface, so it cannot revolve that. Just delete these lines here. Again, fit to our normal. And if we use this spline tool here, start at the bottom somewhere in here, select your first point. That's turning yellow, so it's constraining to that line. It draws a curve between points, so we'll set this point here, a point here, a point here, point here, and if you double click, it will end the spline. So click, click. So there's our spline. So we have a nice fancy vase. The final button again shows you what it will look like when the revolve feature is placed on that. F will fit it to the view. Deselect spline. We can go in and shape this in here. These right here shows the starting angle. We ending angle up here. Basically, it's like putting something on a lathe that's spinning around this axis here. Want to make this a little bit more rounded, we can add an extra point to the spline. This little drop down menu, add a new spline point, add this point here, spline point, deselect that, or hit the escape key, or sweep in there, and then this right here, line this up, we can make this a little fuller roundedness. So I'll tweak a little. Careful when you're moving across the center here because it wants to snap to that center point. If you hold down the shift key, it will avoid that. It's already constrained along this line since we ended that point. But if you hold the shift key, it won't try to snap to any other points. If you let go of the shift key, it'll try to snap to that corner point, or this inside point, or the center point. Or potentially if your mouse is close to this, vertically above that point, or vertically above this point. So move it around a little bit. Roughly that's not too bad. A little wider. Straighten that a little. Not too bad for a simple vase here. Your hand's too dirty with any clay. Green check to commit that, and there's your vase. We can finish it off a little bit by adding a couple extra features. These are fillets and a chamfer. Chamfer is basically an angled edge. If you roll over a surface, it'll give you a thin line. If you roll over an edge, it'll give you a thick line. In this case, whether we're doing the flat bottom surface or the edge, the results are the same. So we'll select that edge, and you can see that it gives you a chamfer, basically creating an angled edge here. Change our distance, we put 2 millimeters here. Take that down a little bit. By giving that a little bit of an edge, it's easier to get like a spatula if you're trying to pop your part off the 3D print bed. If you want to finish this a little bit more, you can use a fillet. Again, if you select this face, it'll try to fillet both edges. And it will fail because there's not enough room. We could say 1 millimeter. And then it will fillet this little edge here, as you can see, and this edge here as well, because we're doing a whole surface or face. Deselect it by clicking it again. If we just want the edge, there's a little edge there. We can add a little bit more. We can go 5, 4, 3. You can use the arrow keys as well. When it's below 10 millimeters, it'll go in 1/10 of a millimeter steps. So you go 2. Click OK. And softens that just a little bit. Ray refinement. After fit, get up to our top edge. We'll accomplish something similar. Fit. You see I have a surface selected. We just fill that and use a fillet on there. It's too rounded. This will be too much of an overhang for that to really print properly. So we'll have to figure out something else. We'll dial that back, and we'll just put a chamfer first to get our angle for that edge. 2 should be okay. Accept that. And then put a fillet on here. Go 4. Go 3. A little bit of an edge there, and click OK. That gives us a nice lip on that top edge shape. In your 3D printing, you usually print at a vase mode, something like this, and it just prints the outer shell to give you a simulation of what it would look like printed, because you would turn off the fill for this top area when you use it into your, put it into your slicer. Then we can then use the shell tool here. Click on the surface or the face you want to remove. The shell is a little too thick. Generally you're printing, often you print with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Depending on your slicer, it'll fatten it out to usually 0.5 millimeters or 0.4. And we can then see how that looks. Click OK. And that's roughly what your vase would look like. You can change the thickness in your slicer of the bottom so it has a little thicker base if needed. Again, F to fit. Fit. If you want to turn off the shell, you have a couple options. You can right click, you can suppress that, you can then reuse it later if you need to, or you can just delete it altogether. Now we need to get this in a file that our 3D printer could use. So to do that, we need to export it as a STL file, which then we can then bring into a slicing program, which will slice it into the G code that we need for our 3D printer. To do that, you would select the part here. So we select the whole part. At the same time, we could right click here. Let's rename this and we'll just call it Simple Vase. Again, right click. You can change the appearance. The default, it cycles through these 8 colors here when you're adding new parts, or you can select colors of your own. You can select the light blue here, click OK, showing that it's still selected. Select none in the area. Click on the vase itself, it will select that surface. Same with this here as well. So we want to select the whole vase, so we select it here in the parts. So we have our simple vase. We need to export this to something that we can 3D print. So if we right click on this, we have our option Export. Change the name here at the top. We'll keep it to Simple Vase. Our format, default usually is Parasolid. Once you select one of these, it does remember it now. I made that suggestion a while ago, which a month or 2 later they added it, so it does remember the export settings. Text or binary. Binary keeps the export small. Text if you need to some reason edit an STL file, but I've never ran across needing that. Our units is millimeters. Resolution. Default is usually medium. If you have these nice smooth surfaces, you probably want fine. Coarse would break it down to be a little bit more low polygon. Fine gives you a much better resolution for rounded surfaces. So we'll say fine. Options of downloading. You can download and store the file in a new tab, or you could just store the file in a new tab, which you could then right click from that tab and download it later. But we'll download it directly. So download, click OK. Generates it, names it here, blinking, show that it's downloaded. Right click here, or click on this menu, open, always open, and show in the Finder. So we'll show in the Finder here. Here's my downloads. I grabbed the recent Cura beta, but you see Simple Vase here. And the Mac, if you hold the space bar, you can see a preview of it, a quick look. So there's our little vase. It should be firing up Cura now. Go back here. For some reason, Cura on the Mac, if I double click, if Cura is not open, it won't drop the part in there. But if it is open, I can double click on this and it'll open that up into Cura. It doesn't switch to the app, but when I switch, well, I double clicked it, so it put 2 copies in there. We don't need the second one. I'll delete that. And if we can see here, that's over 45 degrees, so we're getting a red warning to let us know that it would need some type of support. And if you're printing in base mode, you don't really want to use supports. So if we go back to Onshape, we can go into our sketch here and tweak that. Again, normal fit. And we can get this to below our 45 here. So now that should fix that. So export, right click, Simple Vase, we can call it Simple Vase 2. Remembers the settings, we'll say OK. Down here. But then again, we have to switch to Cura. There's our second one. Delete the first one. Select this, right click, we'll center our selected. And we can now see that that should print OK. So that concludes this first part of creating a simple vase and Onshape and getting it into your slicer. Thanks for checking out iDig3D, and follow us online. Click like, click subscribe. You know the routine. Thank you very much.